Hey everyone, it's Brad Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel here, and I gotta say this is definitely going to be an interesting Calgary Flames trade retrospect, as we're going back to when we wore these pedestal jerseys on a trade that we made where we only traded away, I'd say, one of our best enforcers that the Calgary Flames ever had for another player that we were very, very excited about. Although I say he was a little overrated, definitely had a great junior career. But this trade definitely helped the receiving team win the Stanley Cup and actually produced a future Conn Smythe winner. And it actually, looking back at his history here, it ultimately somewhat bit us back in the end there. But it definitely shows that when trade deadlines, when you package in a bunch of mid-round draft picks, you just never know what those picks are going to become here. I feel in this case, this is the trade retrospect where that comes to fruition for the receiving team, by the way. So before I get into this trade retrospect here, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe to follow along. I mostly do Calgary sports content. Let's say trade retrospects like this. I also do game recaps and stories when they're happening, and I also do personal logs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road, or I'm on holidays, or at a sporting event. So if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, you know what you need to do. And I also have my other social media links down in the description below here. So let's get back into this Calgary Flames trade retrospect here, and I'm going to say Sandy McCarthy was definitely one of the best enforcers that the Calgary Flames have had here. I put them there with Sandy McCarthy. You can probably say he was the pedestal era of Brian McGrattan, and I could say the best complete player that we could say had a little bit of an enforcer role, but scored more goals as well and chipped in and was a part of the 1989 Stanley Cup team, was Tim Hunter here. But what we did here on the trade deadline in the 1997-1998 season here is we decided to trade away Sandy McCarthy and a couple mid-round picks, and we sent them to the Tampa Bay Lightning. In return, we got Jason Weimer. And I remember when Jason Weimer came here the first time, I know he had 2 stints with the Calgary Flames here. Primarily I'm going to talk about his stint the first time that he was here, as we acquired him back in March 1998 there. There was definitely a lot of excitement about him, and about the fact that he was a utility forward that potentially could still provide some more offense there. I know he was highly touted when he originally was drafted, because the Tampa Bay Lightning drafted him 8th overall in the first round back in 1994 there. Because if you look at his career numbers, he definitely has a scoring machine in junior with the Portland Winterhawks here. And he definitely did not pan out, translate that into the National Hockey League level there. But some thought that, this trade would have maybe rejuvenated his career here and give him a fresher start here. Because at the time here, when the Tampa Bay Lightning first joined in the NHL here, they had a couple so-so teams here, but then they definitely fell off the rails there in the late 1990s and early 2000s there, before ultimately picking up the Stanley Cup in 2004, which definitely stings Flames fans here. But this trade actually planted the seeds for that team to win the Stanley Cup here, because the big 3 was definitely their big 3 forwards here, which I'll get into shortly, was a big part of their championship team, as well as they had, I think it was Dan Boyle, who was on defense there, and then they had Nikolai Abdul in the net here. So yeah, as I say, the Calgary Flames traded Sandy McCarthy, who I'd say was one of the best enforcers we had all time, and a 3rd round and a 5th round pick were going to the Tampa Bay Lightning. We got Jason Weimer. And in terms of, being a, guy who could fight, Jason Weimer was a little bit of an upgrade, where he actually provided a little more offense here. I'd say he sacrificed a little bit on the fighting part here, but Jason Weimer definitely was a little bit of a pest player than just a pure enforcer that I felt Sam McCarthy was. But definitely, I felt we missed Sam McCarthy here because he was definitely a popular player because of, how much he fought. And I always remember his celebration where he did this after he, won a fight and got eventually escorted to the penalty box there. Like I say, he was this era's Calgary Flames version, let's say, of Brian McGrattan there. And then we had Jason Weimer for, I believe, 3 or 4 seasons there. And then eventually he went back to Florida to play for the Florida Panthers there, as that we traded him with Valerie Burry. In turn, we got, Dave Gagne and Rob Niedermayer, the other Niedermayer brother there. So Weimer definitely was a journeyman there, and he actually he already played over 700 games in the NHL. I know he was with the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Calgary Flames, Florida Panthers there. I know he briefly was a Minnesota Wild there, and I believe he did finish his career with the New Jersey Devils there. He did come back to the Calgary Flames for a second tour of duty there, as he was signed as a free agent in the summer of 2004, and then we lost that season due to the lockout there. Then he was here for the 05-06 season there, and then eventually he got traded again at a trade deadline to the New Jersey Devils there for a 4th round pick that didn't pan out there. But that's kind of just a Jason Weimer's career there. That he did not surpass or meet his scoring that he showed at the Portland Winterhawks in the WHL there, in the NHL level there, because he still played over 700 games as a scrapper, a best player, bottom line player there, and he did fit in well there, and he replaced that with Sam McCarthy plus got more here. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, they definitely got a lot more than Sandy McCarthy in this trade here, because let's talk about the 2 draft picks that they also got in that tier. So the first one, let's look at the 5th round pick first here, because it was a 1998 5th round pick here. Tampa Bay Lightning actually picked up a guy that many hockey fans in Calgary would have been familiar with at the time, in Curtis Rich here, as he played his junior hockey right here with the Calgary Hitmen here, and he was on that 1999 WHL championship team that went to the Memorial Cup and we lost a heartbreaker in overtime there against the Ottawa 67s there. But Curtis Rich did not have an NHL career there. However, this is where that we traded away one of our greatest enforcers of all time, and the receiving team also ultimately got a Stanley Cup champion and a future Conn Smythe winner. Because you know who they used that 3rd round pick on that we traded away to the Tampa Bay Lightning? We traded away a 3rd round pick that the Tampa Bay Lightning used, and was a 64th overall draft pick in Brad Richards. Yes, that Brad Richards, the guy who won the Conn Smythe Trophy for the Tampa Bay Lightning when they beat the Calgary Flames in 2004 there, as the playoff MVP there. Because, Sandy McCarthy, he played around in the NHL there. He played a little bit with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know he also played with the New York Rangers there, but Sandy McCarthy was not on the Tampa Bay Lightning team that won the Stanley Cup there. And as I mentioned, Curtis Rich was not in the NHL at all here, but Brad Richards came out of that trade that we traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So in some way, we definitely lost the fight again when we traded away one of our greatest enforcers of all time to get Jason Weimer here. And Tampa Bay definitely hit a slam dunk, grand slam home run, and as I say, slam dunk and a grand slam with Brad Richards here. He definitely was a part of their big 3 there that led them to win the Stanley Cup in 2004 there. So definitely an interesting way to look at this trade here, as sometimes when you trade away mid-round picks at the trade deadline, you just never know what those picks turn out to be. So once again, to recap, the Calgary Flames, they traded Sandy McCarthy to the Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick, both in the 1998 draft, for Jason Weimer. So it was a 3-for-1 trade here. And those picks turned out to be, the 3rd round pick was Brad Richards, the 64th overall pick. And the 5th round pick was 121st overall pick by Curtis Richier. And I'm looking at this on NHL Trade Tracker.com here. And then speaking of the big three here, actually the Tampa Bay Lightning was able to get 2 out of their big 3 at the trade deadline on March 1998 here. I'm not too sure exactly how this pick ultimately went to the Nashville Predators here. I think San Jose and Nashville swapped this pick here. But another trade that the Tampa Bay Lightning made that definitely helped them out and eventually become that team that won the Stanley Cup here is that at the trade deadline, the Tampa Bay Lightning traded Brian Marchment, defenseman, David Shaw, and Lightning's conditional right to swap the 1st round pick, which went to the San Jose Sharks there. And that pick ultimately was used for David Ligouan, which eventually, as you recall here in this draft, he was drafted second overall to the Nashville Predators. I think the Sharks and Predators, don't quote me on it, swapped 1st round picks there because the San Jose Sharks picked 3rd that year and they drafted Brad Stewart. Another defenseman that ultimately he actually played for both Calgary teams, as Brad Stewart was rented on the 1999 WHL team for the Calgary Hitmen, and Brad Stewart also played with the Calgary Flames toward the end of his career. Tampa Bay Lightning they acquired from that pick was Andrei Nazarov, another player that actually also spent some time with the Calgary Flames, and the 1st round pick in 1998 there, which happened to be the 1st overall pick there. And as you recall, back in 1998 here, you can debate on how great of a player he was, but Vincent Lecavalier was the 1st overall pick in 1998 there. They kind of overrated him a little where he said he was the Michael Jordan of hockey there. I say he definitely had a very great career, and he was the captain of the 1998, he was the captain of the Tampa Bay that ultimately won the Stanley Cup in 2004 there. One of the iconic moments from that Stanley Cup final there was both captains were fighting there. I believe it was game 3 or 4 there, where Jerome McGinley and Vincent Lecavalier were fighting at one point in that game, and definitely was when the Stanley Cup finals was at peak there. So that's 2 out of the big 3 were planted in the 1998 trade deadline for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it definitely kind of stings quite a bit here that we traded away Sammy McCarthy, one of our greatest enforcers of all time, with a couple picks. Well, we did have a little bit of an upgrade in terms of what Jason Wayne provided compared to Sammy McCarthy here. But one of those picks happened to be a future Conn Smythe winner. And just to kind of add insult to injury here, that future Conn Smythe winner happened to have to be against the Calgary Flames when they won the Stanley Cup here. And then I know that one player that we actually had him too. But looking at the Wikipedia page here, you could say the Ottawa Senators had him first as a Trout here, and he didn't stay on. It was Martin St. Louis. Yeah, definitely a lot of connections from the Flames and Lightning here that we definitely helped the Tampa Bay Lightning win that Stanley Cup in 2004 there, because Martin St. Louis, he eventually came on with the Calgary Flames organization there, and he showed some promise, and he was definitely undersized there. I know the joke was at the time when we had Martin St. Louis and Darren Fleury here that I think the joke was that I think Martin St. Louis was only half an inch taller than Darren Fleury, so they said, well, Fleury can just stand on his wallet, and he would have been just as tall as Martin St. Louis there. But eventually we had him for a couple of years. He showed some promise here and there. He spent a lot of time. At the time it was the St. John Flames, and actually the St. John Flames actually won the Calder Cup in the HL there, and he was a big part of it here. But Martin St. Louis, was praised by then general manager Al Coates here, and Al Coates actually was the one who made this trade here. But then eventually he got let go, and they brought in Craig Button. Yeah, that same Craig Button that you see on TSN when he does his draft rankings there. But that's when Martin St. Louis definitely was let go, and it was almost like he was just looking for anywhere to go to play. And he also got picked up by the Tampa Bay Lightning just after 2000 there, and let's say the rest is history there. So it's definitely an interesting trade retrospect when we traded away Sammy McCarthy and a couple picks for Jason Weimer, and one of those picks happened to be Brad Richards there. Then the other sidebars that I threw in there was that the Sharks and the Lightning made a trade there where the Tampa Bay Lightning got that first overall pick, where they got Vincent Cavier. That was two of their big three, and eventually Martin St. Louis found his way to the Tampa Bay Lightning after playing with the Calgary Flames for a bit here. But not necessarily mean to bring up bad memories here, but it's just an interesting trade or expect to look at, and that's why I like making these videos here. That sometimes I look at these trades and I try to defend them, or just look at them and say, "Wow, that was a great trade here." And I think I might plan to do some trades later in the year here when it gets closer to the date here. When we made some, it looked like a smaller trade, but turned out to be a big trade for the Calgary Flames. Let's say one time when let's say we traded away a second round pick one time in November there, and definitely was the best second round pick that we ever spent here. And then there was another trade that we made in 1981 that brought in one of the greatest Calgary Flames of all time here. And I think eventually I'll make those videos, and I'll try to release it around the same time when the trade happened in retrospect here. Hence the point, trade retrospect here. So yeah, what do you think of this trade and all the trade activity here? It just proves that you just never know, who you trade at the trade deadline and what those picks become. Obviously you need the scouting team, and sometimes a player might just fall in the draft and fall in your lap. It's like, we've got to draft this guy. Looking back in 2016 here, Matthew Tkachuk, I think, definitely fell in our laps, and we definitely had to get him. Definitely was a great pick in retrospect there, looking at that. Also, the 1998 draft there, that was also the time when we drafted Rico Fata. And that definitely did not work out for the Calgary Flames, as Rico Fata definitely bounced around there. And I think at the time he was scouted as the fastest player in the draft there. But that was after when we missed out on Vincent Cavier, David Legwand, and Brad Stewart there. Those were the top three in the 1998 draft there. So what do you think of this video? I'd say, yeah, definitely a very interesting way to look at it. That pick that we traded away was used for Brad Richards, and Brad Richards ultimately won a Stanley Cup, won a Conn Smythe Trophy with that Tampa Bay Lightning, and it just sucked that it had to be against the Calgary Flames here. So, as I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow along there. I also do personal blogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road or I'm on holidays there, or at a sporting event there. So that's all I post on this channel. So if it sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. As obviously I do mostly Calgary sports and other sports content. Just make sure you like, subscribe. Appreciate all the comments and support and subscribers up to this point here, and hopefully continue to keep on going, especially during this time of uncertainty right now in the world. But I also have my other social media links down in the description below there. So, as I say here, go Flames go, and I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully maybe this trade down the road we'll find one that will pay us back, and think we just didn't give up much and got a couple picks and ultimately win a Stanley Cup in the future. So I'll see you then.